hired folks back. Our superintendents that we are talking with now are saying that these pink slips are just basically to keep the balanced budget in place that we are required by law to have. So we are also seeing beyond class size increases and dramatic layoff of teachers. Shorter school years are beginning to take place across this state, where students are no longer even guaranteed 180 days of school in a year. They are already suffering from older textbooks at exactly the time when we are adopting rigorous college and career standards to keep pace with the other 43 states that have adopted the Common Core. Fewer high school electives are in play across our state. All of this adds up to an awful experience for students going forward if Californians are not able to act and voice in June their opinion about an extension to our current tax rate. So with that, given the details I've shared with you, I'd now like to ask my colleague Rick Miller from Riverside to come forward and share a few words.
Thank you, Mike, and good morning. Thank you for joining my colleagues and I this morning in asking for the opportunity as citizens to have some say regarding our future. Currently, the governor is asking for authorization to place a tax extension on the June ballot, but time essentially has run out. We need action now, this week, today. The decision to have a ballot decision has been postponed too long. The mere mention of taxes typically engages great polarization between the political parties, and so it is here. This is not a new tax. It is one we already pay, and a successful ballot measure would not increase it, only allow us to pay a bit longer with the belief that we will exit from this budget chaos. To provide some context, there's probably been irreparable damage done to our students and our economic future in this state with the prior reductions in service to our students. As an example, several of us standing before you today have reduced $100 million or more in the past 3 years in each one of our districts. That equates directly to jobs, but more importantly, it equates to services to children. Most of us have had to reduce the length of our school year. From a national perspective, we trail the national average in per pupil spending by over $2,000 per pupil. As a resource allocation, we are less than 10% less than the national average. From a state perspective, your students and mine, this year, 2010-11, we received less financial support than we did in the last century. My wife says last century. I said, yeah, 1997, 1998. All of this is before we have these tax revenues terminate, without we as citizens having the opportunity to choose otherwise. Our students need action from our Sacramento representatives today. 3 years ago, in 2008, before we really entered into this recession and the budget crisis, we ranked 43rd out of 50 states in per pupil spending, and 50th in the ratio of highly qualified teachers and staff to every student. How do you think we rank now? As a multi-generation California, I find it's appalling that most analysts now believe we're probably dead last in both of these categories. We need the opportunity as citizens to determine our response to this budget crisis and educational disaster. Our economy is recovering with these tax revenues in place. I would agree that it's not fast enough, and we have still many out there that are underemployed or unemployed. However, in February, we had the largest one-month job gain in 20 years. Additionally, the Legislative Analyst's Office estimates these taxes are costing us currently, with the average Californian, about $20 per family, or about one trip to McDonald's. There is clearly polling data that shows support for funding of education and support of our students, but that's probably beside the point. The reality is that I want, and I think you want, the opportunity to decide to support our children with the current funding. If the tax extension does not go forward, the average 4-member family can visit McDonald's for a Big Mac dinner once per month. That's what we're talking about. Bottom line, I would urge our legislators, all of them, to work with our governor and give our citizens the right to vote on this measure in June, either up or down. At least that way, we will all know what we've chosen collectively as Californians, rather than some backroom deal here in Sacramento. Actually, I always thought, regardless of the political party, that was part of what democracy was all about, allowing us as citizens to decide. At this time, I'd like to reintroduce our host from Sacramento City Unified School District, Superintendent Jonathan Raymond.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Rick. And also want to let you know that our fellow superintendents are also available for comment after we get finished up. I look right in front of me and I see 2 yellow school buses. So we all know what that means, a field trip to the state capitol. Well, what's the most important civics lesson that we could possibly tell? That a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Truly representative. And that's the issue that we're talking about here today, is let's put this measure on the ballot and let the people of California decide our future. It's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue. It's a basic issue of representation and democracy. If we think about our 6.3 million children here in California, the largest percentage and the largest share of school children across this country, what happens if just 10% of those 6.3 million don't finish school? What will their futures look like? And we know that at least half of these children come from families that live below the federal poverty guidelines. And we know from a recent UCLA study that was just published that the budget impact and cuts greatly affect those that come from poverty. Almost 1/10 of our students in California are in special education. 1/3 of them are English language learners. In fact, 36% of English language learners in the country are here in California. And this is the future workforce. This is the engine. This is how the United States competes globally. We know today of the underinvestment in California. We know today the impact that it's having globally, as India has more honor students than the United States has even students. These are the very real challenges that we face today. So it's critical that we let everyone know that education is not an expense. In fact, education is an investment, the most important investment we could make. Gandhi says that you can tell the soul of a society by the way it treats its children. How are we treating our children here in California? That's what we're talking about. That's what this issue is about. So I'm going to close on that, and I'm going to open it up for questions, and again, welcome my colleagues. Thank them for being here today, for joining us to speak first about kids.